Luka Doncic is a Los Angeles Laker. I went to bed on Saturday night and it was business as usual. The Lakers picked up a win in MSG against the New York Knicks. LeBron had a triple-double. We didn't think that anything crazy was going to go down, but the NBA with the trade deadline upcoming, you know there's going to be some drama, and boy did we have some. This is by far the strangest, most surprising trade I've ever covered here on Spectator Sports. I went to sleep with Luka Doncic as a Dallas Maverick and Anthony Davis as a Los Angeles Laker, both players recovering from injury. When I woke up on Sunday morning, my phone was blowing up. Numerous notifications from Bleacher Report, ESPN, talking about the Shams Charania report with Luka Doncic has been traded to the Los Angeles Lakers for Anthony Davis. And there's more compensation, which we'll talk about as well, but mainly wanted to discuss the impacts for both teams. And we've had a couple days to digest it, and we're gonna break that down for you guys. First thoughts on this trade was, wow. I mean, Luka Doncic is my favorite player, and now he's playing on my favorite team. He's a young superstar, and there's just been so much talent that we can see in him. I mean, he just carried the Dallas Mavericks on this Cinderella run to the NBA Finals in 2024, and they were unfortunately outmatched by the superiorly talented Boston Celtics in 5 games. But 8 months later, their superstar is traded to an entirely different team. So how did we get here? For starters, this season began with Luka Doncic entering training camp overweight. It's been rumored that he's weighed more than 270 pounds, and by the time the regular season rolled around, he's had various injuries. He had a wrist injury that kept him out, but later the soft tissue injuries started to pile up, and that's mainly been in his calf. He left the Christmas Day game and did not return, and we haven't seen Luka Doncic suit up for the Dallas Mavericks since. And so far in 2024 and 2025, he's only played 22 games so far for the Dallas Mavericks. The Mavs started to grow frustrated with Luka's conditioning, his lack of commitment to the defensive end, and also just the constant barking with the referees. And to talk about the issues with conditioning, we know Luka likes his beer. I mean, there's a viral video now with Michael Finley confiscating a beer after Luka and the Mavs were celebrating their Western Conference championship and their berth to the finals for the first time in over a decade. He's actually entered the league as a rookie at 230 pounds, and you can just see in the side-by-side profile that there's significant mass there in his face and his midsection, and I can assure you that it's not muscle. Defensively, he's been nothing but a liability. Anytime he is set up against an opposing offensive player, I mean, they pick him apart. He has a huge blow-by percentage, and that was really seen in the NBA Finals when the Boston Celtics routinely picked at him time in and time out when he was matched up against Jason Tatum or Jaylen Brown, and he had no answers for them, because we know that he can definitely dial up when he wants to, but he does seldomly choose when to play defense on a consistent basis. Now, the issues with the referees, again, it comes back to the NBA Finals because he was continuously barking at the referees. He got a technical foul in Game 3, and you have to have some type of working relationship. I understand referees suck, they blow calls all the time, but there's comes to a point where you're just coming off as a whiny player, and referees aren't going to give you the calls if you're constantly giving them a hard time. So that's main concerns that the Dallas Mavericks GM Nico Harrison had problems with, and possibly reasons why they wanted to have this trade. Now, I get these concerns, but if I'm Nico Harrison, I still don't pull the trigger. I mean, Luka Doncic is a generational talent, and there has to be something that made Nico pull the trigger so quickly. And I think what it really was is this contract extension. Luka is in the middle of a 5-year, $215 million deal, and that's helped out by his several appearances in the All-Star game, but also all NBA teams. But now with these injury concerns arising and the Mavs really looking at the future of their franchise, they were tasked with potentially shaping up their cap room to take on Luka's contract beyond 2027 and offer him a 4-year, $345 million deal. And they simply just were not willing to pay that amount of money to a player that, for the reasons I listed, doesn't pay attention to the defensive side of the ball, doesn't take care of his own body, and constantly barks at referees. Now with this trade, this unfortunately is going to cost Luka Doncic upwards of $117 million, because now with the Lakers, he's only eligible to sign a $228 million deal. That's a ton of money that he's losing out on, not to mention that LA, particularly being in the state of California, has a ton of taxes compared to the state of Texas, where Dallas is, where they have zero income tax. In the press conference on Sunday detailing the why behind it, Nico Harrison discussed that defense wins championships. Hence, him bringing in Anthony Davis and also Max Christie. And we know that Anthony Davis has been a perennial Defensive Player of the Year candidate. He's one of the best two-way players in the NBA. And also Max Christie has been a decent 3-and-D player, and he's shaping up to be a consistent contributor for the Lakers this season. That was really kind of a shot at Luka Doncic as well, that we've known on this documented history that he has little to no impact on the defensive side of the basketball. So you're trading a 25-year-old superstar for an aging Anthony Davis who is going to be turning 32 in March. If you're talking about injuries and consistency, what about the consistency for Anthony Davis? He's been a player that's been plagued by injuries for his entire career, dating back to New Orleans. I can't remember a time that he's played consistent basketball outside of the 2014-2015 season with the Pelicans. Comes to LA, and I think he was great his first year, but then in 2021 and 2022, he plays less than 50% of his games, and until last season, that was the first time in his Lakers tenure that he broke the 70-game mark since joining the Lakers. He's been unreliable, he's been constantly getting injured, and that messes up little stretches where you can't get the consistency and the chemistry. What I always say is availability is the best ability. I know Luka has his faults, but he literally carried your franchise since 2020, and it only took until 2023 to bring in Kyrie Irving and then retool the defensive side of the basketball, where you bring in bigs like Daniel Gafford and Derek Lively in the offseason. That's still not enough, because you saw the huge talent disparity that you had with not just the Boston Celtics, but even in the Western Conference. I mean, the Mavericks really got into the finals thanks to the greatness and shot making of Luka Doncic. Remember, at one point, the Mavericks had Kristaps Porzingis, Jalen Brunson, and Luka Doncic on the same team. All three of these players are on different teams, and we've already seen Jalen Brunson and Kristaps Porzingis have massive success in their respective teams. If Luka Doncic goes out and plays stellar basketball for the LA Lakers for the next decade, this is going to be the biggest collective fumble in franchise history and even NBA history. I thought Luka Doncic was one of these untradeable players, along with Anthony Edwards and Victor Wembanyama and even Shai Gilgeous-Alexander. I mean, these are the future players of the NBA, the future faces of the NBA, where they're young, they're super talented, some of them are two-way players, but also just have huge impacts internationally. I mean, Shai is from Canada, Wemby's from France, and Luka Doncic is from Slovenia. He's a huge impact on European basketball as we see today. But if I'm a Mavs fan, okay, sure, I could get with maybe trading Luka Doncic, but at least get a treasure trove of picks and a bunch more on return. I mean, like I said, you get a player in Anthony Davis who's turning 32 next month, and just another role player, and one first-round draft pick in 2029, which you probably won't be able to use because the way this core is going to be, they're going to probably age out by 2027 at the earliest. A player like Luka Doncic commands several picks, I mean into the mid 2030s, but players like Rudy Gobert and Mikal Bridges, for example, they demanded huge assets just to bring them to their current teams today, but Luka Doncic doesn't. Yet again, I got to think about this new ownership group and management, because we already talked about the potential beef with Nico Harrison, where he may have just gotten sick of Luka Doncic and just traded him out of spite. But there's this rumor circulating around with the Addison family, who just took over as the majority owners of the Dallas Mavericks because Mark Cuban sold his majority stake with the Mavericks a couple years ago. And since then, we've seen the Adelson family, who actually has a huge play in Vegas as they own several casinos. They're trying to bring that casino lifestyle to Dallas, but due to the state legislature, that's just not a thing in Texas particularly. So what I'm getting at is that they're trying to maybe tank attendance in Dallas, make it such an undesirable product, and then steal the Mavericks from Dallas and relocate them to Vegas, which their headquarters are. Clearly, the relationship between Luka and Dallas Mavericks ownership and management soured in the recent years, but I really feel that they really must hate Luka to not only just trade him, but also take away at least $100 million out of his pocket. This trade is going to be talked about for years to come, but looking at it now, I mean, yes, this might help you out in the short term, but this was not nearly enough. But as of now, at first look, this looks like to be a massive mistake for the Dallas Mavericks. Now, while the Mavs have just traded their 25-year-old superstar to the LA Lakers, they do pick up Anthony Davis and Max Christie, but specifically talking about Anthony Davis, he's going to fit in pretty naturally with the Dallas Mavericks, because now with Daniel Gafford and Derek Lively, whenever he gets back from injury, Anthony Davis can simply slide back into his more natural powered forward position. And at the 4, he can be a little bit more of that stretch 4 and then be the weak side shot blocker. And that's just something that Anthony Davis has always been more comfortable with. Kyrie Irving is going to be your combo guard, simultaneously setting up the whole offense, but also being more of an attacking type of shooting guard that we used to see in this game, dating back to his days in Brooklyn and Boston and also the Cleveland Cavaliers. You also have PJ Washington and Klay Thompson, who are going to be your sharpshooters, and they're going to bring you contributions on the defensive side as well. And right now, this team probably is going to look a lot better than the Lakers will for the short term. And short term, they actually have what it takes to make the NBA Finals, even as presently constructed. The West is wide open right now, and if these guys can figure it out in the short term and figure it out, they can go on a run and potentially have early returns on investment. And who knows, maybe if they win a championship, this deal is very well worth it. But this has to play itself out, because if they don't win in the next 2-3 seasons, remember that most of this core is going to be north of 35, and I mean, Klay Thompson only has so limited time, Kyrie as well, and Anthony Davis. So they really have to make sure that they maximize the next 2-3 seasons before all these players age out and eventually retire. Let's look back at Anthony Davis's tenure with the Los Angeles Lakers. Ever since joining the Lakers in the summer of 2019, we saw immediate success. We talked about the 2020 bubble championship run with LeBron in Orlando, and that brought the Lakers' first title in over a decade. But I'd like to say, since then, his tenure with the Lakers has been a disappointment. Through 2021 and 2022, he actually played less than 50% of possible games. And he was supposed to be the next great Laker. He was supposed to be the guy that takes the reins from LeBron James as he entered his final chapter. And he was supposed to be the go-to option in the Lakers offense. But somehow, some way, Anthony Davis had injuries, and then also just never had that kind of killer instinct to say, well, no, this is my franchise now, LeBron. I'm going to take over, I'm going to build my own legacy. But for whatever reason, He was content with being the second fiddle to LeBron James, and a LeBron James that was aging, getting older day by day. And we know that Father Time is always undefeated, and eventually LeBron will have to hang it up, but it never seemed that Anthony Davis was ready to take over as being the face of the Lakers. He missed a ton of time due to various ailments, and he never got that Defensive Player of the Year that we always thought he would get. He's lived off this whole he's a top 5 talent label for many years, but never quite reached that potential. He always needed to be challenged to be at his best, and guys like Giannis and Nikola Jokic have overtaken him as some of the best bigs in the league. And both of them have had multiple MVPs. Giannis has had a Defensive Player of the Year award as well, beating Davis in 2020. But also they have been the faces of their franchises, leading them to championships, and also far more reliable, especially in the postseason. Had he been better, I'm sure the Lakers would not have even thought of pulling this trade with the Dallas Mavericks. But when you think about trading him for a younger superstar at age 25, I think Rob Pelinka was so quick to pull that trade. Now, what does this mean for the Lakers? Because they made this move after one of their best wins of the season. LeBron James was in Madison Square Garden under the lights playing the New York Knicks and had probably one of his best performances of the year. A 30-piece, a triple-double, put on a show for the MSG crowd, and then celebrated that performance at dinner with his family. Now, Rob Pelinka, I've been a little bit critical of him. I've said he's been a puppet of LeBron ever since the two linked up in 2018. But this move was made without even consulting LeBron James. Because remember that LeBron and AD are represented by the same agent, Rich Paul of Clutch Sports. And if LeBron maybe knew about this, I'm sure Anthony Davis would have heard about it a lot sooner, because this whole trade was done in the early morning hours Eastern time, and nobody knew about it until the trade was actually put through. Even Luka and Anthony Davis did not know about this trade until it was finalized. And it's clear to me with this move, Rob Pelinka and the Lakers are thinking about a post-LeBron era in Los Angeles. They knew that LeBron has recently turned 40 and he's been great, but eventually he will retire. That's just a fact. Yeah, you could roll the dice with Anthony Davis and play out those years and try to build around him, but we've already seen what he can do as a Laker, and even in his days in New Orleans. Teams have tried to build around him and they've failed. I mean, his best playoff performance basically as the go-to guy in New Orleans was a second-round exit. And that's good. I mean, the Lakers haven't really had too much success since they won the title in 2020, with only one time that they've gone past the first round. But I do have to think that the Lakers making this move for Luka Doncic have now bought themselves a decade, because Luka has been a superstar since entering the league in 2018. I know Luka Doncic has his faults. We talked about his conditioning problems, his issues with the referees. But a team and a franchise like the LA Lakers is an international brand, and that changes things. And I mean, if you look at Luka's Twitter account, he pays homage to Kobe and his late daughter Gianna, who tragically died 5 years ago in that helicopter accident. We know that the Lakers always have a superstar, whether it's Magic and Kareem. Later it's Shaq and Kobe. Later it's just Kobe and Gasol. Then you have LeBron come in with Anthony Davis. Now the Lakers have their next star of the 2020s and the 2030s, because Luka's only 25 years old. Because remember, he's probably just entering his prime as an NBA prospect. He's been competing in this game of basketball since he was the age of 16, going up against grown men. It's always when we doubt Luka Doncic that he always puts on a show. He always exceeds expectations. He has that alpha, that dog in him, and I think he fits perfectly with what the Lakers want to do in a post-LeBron world. This is clearly not a move for right now, as we know that basically trading away Anthony Davis will gut their front line that already had problems when Anthony Davis was out due to injury. And it's going to be an interesting rest of the season. They currently stand in 5th place in the Western Conference. I think that it's going to take some time to gel, as also Luka's recovering from a calf strain. So they probably will dip in the Western Conference standings, but forget about the results for this year. Even next year, because, well, LeBron's heading into what could be his last season. I wouldn't be surprised if maybe he just says, look guys, thank you for your time, but I think I might head up north to play with Steph Curry and Draymond and give it one last shot to win a title before I call it quits. And that's fine. I think the Lakers are definitely content with whatever LeBron wants to do, but also they're focusing on actually building something for their future, because if they, like I said, stuck with Anthony Davis, well, they do risk being back to the post-Kobe Bryant days where they were a laughingstock. They were up there in the lottery, the top 2 picks on a consistent basis, failing on pick after pick. And then eventually LeBron comes through and then saves the day and brings them back into relevancy. Like I said, Luka, when we doubt him, he finds something in his inner soul and just unleashes it. And I think he's going to take this personally. This trade was kind of an indictment, not just on him, but his work ethic. And not only that, he recently, even just last week, bought a home in Dallas. And now he has to put that thing back on the market and deal with the taxes of California and Los Angeles. He has to deal with losing out on over $100 million on the Supermax that he's no longer eligible due to this trade. And I think this is all going to motivate him at this point. There's going to be a lot of things now the Lakers can do. I'm sure that they're going to build around Luka for years to come. Just when we think that the NBA has gotten boring and maybe the ratings are down, I know that trades are undefeated, and right now the Lakers look like they're poised to be one of the teams of the future, pairing Luka Doncic with their young hotshot head coach JJ Redick. Now he seems like he's on the path to be the next Lakers great.